Well, speaking of lawyers and shakeups, this morning there are shakeups to the external Trump legal team. NBC's Hallie Jackson reports that Mark Kasowitz is no longer leading outside counsel, though he and his team will continue to guide the president. Politico and the AP report that Kasowitz is seen as a diminishing presence in the operation. And Mark Corallo, the spokesman for the outside legal team, tells Peter Alexander he has resigned. He started just 2 months ago, and according to Politico, had grown frustrated with the operation and warring factions and lawyers. Corallo was also reportedly concerned about whether he was being told the truth about various matters, one of those people said. Heidi Presbella is here. Heidi, what do you hear about how hope always springs eternal, that someone someday will be different? It seems like this is how every story about tangoing with Trump ends.
Well, it's also in the context of what is happening at this time, which is that Corallo knows more perhaps than what he's saying in terms of having this distrust that maybe he's not being told the truth. Now, the timing of all of this in terms of Trump going after Mueller, going after Sessions, seems to be that he is upset that they are going to go after his tax returns. And I take you back to the very beginning of this campaign that all of us have been pushing to get that disclosure. And somehow, you know, the president promised during the course of the campaign that after the audit was over, he would give us those tax returns. Of course, he never did. And not only did he not give us the tax returns that weren't under audit, we never saw any tax returns that are no longer under audit. So this seems to be the trigger point for the president, the point at which he's becoming very nervous, and the point at which even those closest advisors around him are essentially starting to bail, like Corallo. I would like to know, what was it that made him suspicious that maybe even he isn't being told the truth?
Nicole, I want to jump back to where you started the show. A great interview last month with Corker, where Corker said it is implausible that Trump would ever fire Mueller. The one thing about Trump is he tells you what he's going to do. He shows his hand. That's what totalitarian people do. He has said, there is a red line if you go into my businesses. Of course they're going into his businesses. I want to refer anybody to a spectacular article by Greg Unger in the New Republic called Trump's Laundromat, where it just lays out over the last 20 years the dirty Russian money coming in. Trump knows he cannot let it go that far. He cannot. He will be destroyed. He will end up possibly in jail. He will fire Mueller at some point. You can see it. He's teeing it up. And that's where this is going. Yeah. Make no mistake about it. And Donald Trump is not going to sit by, regardless of what the laws or what the repercussions are, and let this investigation go on its own terms in its current way.
Yeah, and Michael, should I jump in here? Because, one, I think only Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein can fire Mueller. And it's, I mean, Mueller isn't the only one who enrages him. In your interview from earlier this week, I made a list of everyone dissed in 50 minutes. Sessions, McCabe, Rosenstein, Mueller, and Comey. I mean, these they're not all the same. Obviously, these are distinct men with different profiles. But anyone, arguably, that's going to run the Justice Department or be the DAG is going to have some commitment to the rule of law, which is going to allow Mueller to conduct an investigation. And there's nothing outside the scope of the investigation. If you're looking at following the money, I mean, that seems sort of central to it.
Yeah, I mean, you can clearly see as they do this research and they sort of look into the lawyers, they're also looking, you know, not only to put, you know, hurdles in Mueller's way, but if they have to make the argument to get rid of Mueller, how would they do that? And would this give them ammunition to do that? And they've raised these questions about Mueller's relationship with Comey. And that's not really, there really isn't much of a relationship there. They've said, oh, Mueller can't do this because him and Comey are best friends and Comey did this to get him appointed. Well, indeed, they have worked together in the past. Mueller and Comey did, but they aren't really that close. They aren't really buddy-buddy. They're folks that Comey has been very close with over the years, that he worked with as a prosecutor or that he took with him to the FBI. But there really isn't a relationship there. But they've seized on that as a way of undermining Mueller. Now, the interesting thing is there's probably few people in Washington as well respected by both parties as Mueller. So they're taking on someone who a lot of people like. like and who a lot of people have respect for, and someone who is really credited with keeping the country safe after 9/11 as the FBI director, and as basically keeping the FBI intact as it moved forward and changed its mission towards counterterrorism.
I want to get to some of the other non-Candy Striper voices here around the table. Nicole just made this point, Richard, that about the list of people that Trump took on in the legal, judicial, law enforcement establishment. It seems to me that he's now at war, effectively, with that entire establishment.
Justice.
With the Justice Department, the FBI, these institutions that have quasi-independent status in Washington. They are, in fact, they're political appointments, but they operate independently. The last time Donald Trump went to war with a Washington establishment, it was the intelligence establishment. It did not work out that well for him. So as you look at where we are right now, as these battle lines are being drawn, where do you see this going?
Well, it's not clear to me it has an inherent or an internal limit. Why do we assume it does? At the end of the day, Donald Trump, like any president, is going to think about self-preservation. And I think because he comes outside the political culture, I don't think his initial instinct, I don't think what's his default position is the preservation of the system. Yeah. I think it's the preservation of his presidency, the preservation of himself, the preservation of his family. So I think we have to understand at some point that there's probably going to be a structural tension between what is legal and what is legitimate. Right. And I think I think it's too narrow a conversation to have around this table and other tables to simply say, is what he is doing legal? Right. I think there's going to be a larger conversation about his view of the presidency and what he can do.
The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes about Sessions, quote, "The White House said Thursday that President Trump still has confidence in Attorney General Jeff Sessions, but after the past 2 days, the better question is whether Mr. Sessions still has confidence in the president. Mr. Trump needs the AG at this point more than the reverse. Working for a president who can be as willful and rash as Mr. Trump can't be easy, and some advisors may find it impossible over time. But Mr. Trump needs people who can protect him and the country from his worst instincts. And if Mr. Sessions quits, Mr. Trump might not find anyone else who'll take the job." Eddie, we began the show in talking about all of this that has encountered over the past week or so. We began the show with Bob Corker. Talking with Nicole. And it's interesting when you think about the role that the Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Bob Corker, other respected Republicans in the Senate and the House might well have to play as this continues. They well might have to go to the White House to tell the president that, Mr. President, you're not only playing with fire, you are on fire. Right. And you got to stay away from Bob Mueller.
We would hope that would be the case, and I think that would be the case, in fact. Watching President Trump throw Jeff Sessions under the bus, it makes one wonder why anyone on the Hill would align themselves with this guy. In some ways, it reminds me of an evil character in one of my son's favorite shows, Voldemort. Only I must live at the end of the day, and that's the way he seems to function. Yeah. And so it seems to, if you align yourself with this guy, you might very well end up, shall we say, not surviving.
All right, still ahead on Morning Joe, an NBC News exclusive. Foreign correspondent Keir Simmons just interviewed Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. Lavrov is one of Vladimir Putin's closest confidants and was invited inside the Oval Office by President Trump last May. Keir will join us live from Moscow with that exclusive interview just ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.